Have you ever thought about, like, how some families manage to build wealth that lasts for generations? And then others, even millionaires, see it vanish in a blink.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, right? Like, the average millionaire could lose everything in just a couple generations.
Right.
But then you've got these billionaire dynasties where wealth spans, what, centuries? So what's the secret? How did they do that?
It is the question, isn't it? And, it's not just for the super rich to think about.
Right.
The principles behind that kind of long-term wealth, building it, keeping it going.
Yeah.
Those are valuable no matter where you stand financially. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about growing what you have strategically, for the long haul, your future.
Exactly. So no matter where you are, just starting out building that nest egg or already doing really well, understanding how these billionaires do it can give you a serious edge. We're not talking about a quick buck here. We're going to dive deep into their mindsets, how they invest, how they grow their fortunes, even some of their daily habits. We're talking tax strategies, like all of it.
The whole thing.
To give you those aha moments, those insights into how seemingly small shifts in your thinking, in your actions, can actually make a huge difference over time.
Compound. Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Where do we even start with understanding this kind of financial longevity? Is it how they think about money, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect place to start because, for a lot of billionaires, their wealth isn't just a number.
Right.
It's not just in a bank account. It's a reflection of how they see the entire financial landscape. It's different. This mindset, even more than any hot stock tip or whatever, that's the driving force.
So it's not just the tactics, it's the philosophy.
The philosophy, yeah. Behind that success.
Interesting. So what's different about how they think?
Well, one of the first things you'll notice is their long-term focus. We're not talking about next quarter, not even next year's returns. We're talking about generational wealth.
Wow.
Decades, even centuries down the line for their families. It's about building something that lasts, not chasing a quick buck. Building those lasting assets instead of just relying on a salary from a 9-to-5.
Okay, so thinking really big picture, long term, how does that affect someone who's not, starting at $1 billion?
Well, it changes how you define success, right? It's less about today's paycheck and more about the strength of your assets tomorrow and beyond. This long-term perspective affects every financial decision, what you invest in, how you plan your estate. It's foundational for anyone looking to build wealth that lasts, even if your goals are different.
It's like planting an oak tree.
Exactly.
Right? It takes time to grow, but it lasts for generations.
That's it. That's the idea.
Okay, so that long-term view, it kind of leads into another big idea that I've noticed.
Yes.
Ownership. It's not just about working for money, right? It's about owning things that make money for you. Stocks, businesses, real estate, actual equity.
Exactly.
Like the stat that blew my mind was that 90% of billionaires, 90% hold a huge chunk of their wealth in equity ownership.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, that's not just having savings in a bank.
No, it highlights a core difference. Earning an income versus owning something that generates income. You own equity, you benefit directly from the growth of those assets over time.
Yeah, so you're not just working for the money's working for you.
Exactly. And this principle, it's not exclusive to billionaires. Anyone can start thinking this way. Maybe invest in a few shares of a company, start small. It's about becoming an owner, not just a consumer.
So shifting your perspective. Okay, they're thinking long term, they're focused on owning assets. But it's not like they just sit back and wait for the money to roll in.
Right.
There's this whole idea of calculated risk and leverage.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you break that down? And how does that apply to someone who's not, looking to borrow millions?
Absolutely. So the ultra wealthy, they understand that building wealth, especially significant wealth, involves some risk.
Yeah.
Right. But it's calculated risk. It's not gambling.
Right.
It's about carefully weighing potential downsides against potential rewards, doing your research, your due diligence, and then there's leverage.
Okay.
It's instead of using only their own money, they might take out loans, bring in investors, amplify their potential for growth. Think of it like you're using borrowed resources to potentially boost your returns, but it's a double-edged sword. Magnifies gains, but also magnifies losses, which is why that calculated part, understanding the risks, is so important.
Right. So it's not just about taking risks, it's about taking smart risks.
Exactly. And even on a smaller scale, taking on a mortgage to buy a rental property, that's leverage. You're using borrowed money to buy an asset that hopefully will generate income and appreciate in value.
Okay, so they have this long-term, ownership-focused, risk-aware mindset. and they know how to use leverage strategically. So how do they actually invest? Where do they put their money to make it grow? Because I'm guessing it's not just index funds and savings accounts.
You got it. Billionaires, they actively invest across a range of asset classes. It's not passive.
Huh.
And you consistently see these 3 core pillars in their portfolios.
All right, I'm intrigued. What are these pillars?
Okay, so first up, stocks and private equity. This means investing in publicly traded companies on the stock market, sure, but also putting money into startups, private businesses, those with high growth potential before they go public. Those private equity investments, those often involve bigger stakes and a longer-term commitment.
So it's not just buying a few shares here and there. They're getting a significant ownership stake in the company.
That's right, especially with those private equity deals.
Okay, what's pillar number 2?
Pillar number 2, real estate. And we're not just talking about a fancy house. We're talking commercial properties, office buildings, retail spaces, apartment complexes that bring in rent, even just land. Real estate, it offers tangible assets and often that reliable income stream that helps build long-term wealth.
Right, and it's often seen as a safer bet, right?
It can be. Something more stable, something tangible, can weather economic storms a bit better than, say, the stock market.
Okay, makes sense. So what rounds out this trifecta of investments for the ultra-wealthy?
That would be alternative investments. This is a broader category, things like art, precious metals like gold, and now increasingly cryptocurrencies, and then more complex things like hedge funds. These can help diversify a very large portfolio and potentially offer returns that aren't tied to the ups and downs of traditional markets.
So they're spreading their bets, diversifying across a lot of different areas?
Exactly, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
But with that much wealth, I imagine protecting it becomes a pretty big priority too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that diversification across asset classes, that's risk management in itself.
Right.
So they're not overexposed to any one market. But beyond that, global diversification is key. Spreading investments across different countries, different economies, that helps mitigate risks specific to one region.
Makes sense.
And then you get into those more sophisticated asset protection strategies. These are things you might want to understand conceptually, even if you're not using them right now.
Okay, like what? I've always heard about trusts and offshore accounts, but honestly, it sounds kind of complicated, even a bit shady.
It can seem complex, but at their core, these are legal structures, right?
Okay.
Designed to hold and manage assets in a way that protects them from liabilities, lawsuits and such. And they can also have big implications for estate planning.
Okay, so for passing wealth down to future generations.
Exactly. Trusts, for example, those are legal arrangements where assets are held by a trustee for the benefit of someone else. So it separates legal ownership from the actual enjoyment of the assets. Offshore accounts, those are accounts held in foreign countries.
Right.
Can offer different legal and regulatory frameworks. Combined with different legal strategies, these can help safeguard wealth.
So it's about creating layers of protection. But they're not just about holding on to what they have, are they? They're also actively working to make more money from these assets we've been talking about.
That's right. The wealthy, they're really good at creating multiple streams of passive income. Think about dividends from their stock holdings, royalties from intellectual property they might own, and of course, rental income from those properties.
So the money's constantly working.
And here's the key takeaway. They often reinvest those profits. This allows their wealth to grow exponentially over time through compounding.
Right, compounding.
It's about creating a system where assets generate more assets. This is something anyone can and should think about. Reinvesting earnings to fuel future growth, no matter how much you're starting with.
It's like that snowball effect. It starts small, but as it rolls, it gets bigger and bigger. Okay, so they're making their money work hard for them. But another piece of the puzzle that always comes up when talking about the wealthy is taxes. I mean, with that much wealth, there must be some pretty sophisticated strategies to, keep more of their money.
Oh, absolutely. It's a crucial part of preserving wealth long term. It's not just what you earn, it's what you keep. And the wealthy, they're very proactive about tax optimization.
So what does that look like? We're talking about loopholes the average person doesn't even know about.
Not necessarily. Often it's about using tax-efficient accounts that are available to everyone, like 401ks and IRAs.
Right. Those are pretty common.
Exactly. The contributions or growth within those accounts can have tax advantages. And they're very aware of capital gains taxes. That's the tax you pay when you sell an asset for a profit. So they often have a longer-term investment horizon.
To avoid those taxes.
It can help, yeah. And reinvesting earnings instead of cashing out, that can defer or lower their immediate tax burden. Something to consider.
So being strategic within the existing system. But I know we also talked about using businesses and trusts. How do those factor into reducing taxes?
This is where how they structure their assets gets really interesting.
Okay.
The ultra-wealthy often set up legal entities like LLCs, limited liability companies, or S-Corp for their businesses and investments. These can offer different tax advantages depending on the situation. For example, they might be able to deduct business expenses, which reduces their taxable income. And then you have family trusts, which we discussed earlier, for asset protection.
Right.
Those also play a big role in tax-efficient wealth transfer between generations.
So minimizing inheritance taxes and things like that.
Exactly. They can be set up to minimize or even avoid estate taxes, so more of their wealth goes to their heirs. It's about understanding the rules and structuring things in the most advantageous way.
So it sounds like it takes a whole team of experts, lawyers, and accountants and such. Is that just a billionaire thing?
It often does involve a team. Yes, they have access to top-notch advisors. But for you, the principles still apply. Understanding the tax implications of your financial decisions, planning accordingly, those are relevant no matter what.
Right. So even if we don't have a team of lawyers, being tax savvy is important.
Absolutely.
And then there's charitable moving. We often see billionaires setting up huge foundations. Is that all altruism, or are there tax benefits there too?
Well, for many, philanthropy is a genuine motivation, and the impact these foundations have is undeniable.
Yeah, for sure.
But charitable giving, especially through foundations and large donations, can offer tax advantages.
Interesting.
Donations to certain organizations are often tax deductible,
Okay.
which can lower their overall tax bill. You see this with Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos. They're huge philanthropic efforts, often done through foundations. It's a way to give back and strategically manage their taxes at the same time.
It's a win-win. Okay, so it's a really multi-layered approach. It's not just about making money. It's about keeping it, growing it strategically, and managing it over the long term.
Absolutely. It's a holistic approach.
So shifting gears a bit, it's not all about financial moves, is it? I've heard that billionaires often have certain habits, daily routines that contribute to their success.
Oh, definitely. Success in any area often leaves clues. And when you look at self-made billionaires, you see patterns, habits that help them build and sustain their wealth.
So what are some of those habits? What can we learn from them?
One of the biggest ones is a commitment to lifelong learning, constant reading. A huge percentage of millionaires, like 85% by some studies, read at least one book a month. That suggests a strong link between knowledge and financial success.
Interesting.
Certain books come up again and again. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, Think and Grow Rich. It's about continually expanding your understanding of wealth and finance.
So it's not just what you know, it's that you're always learning.
Exactly. What you learn today might not be enough for tomorrow.
What else?
Another big one, taking care of your physical and mental well-being. Prioritizing health and productivity.
Okay, so it's not all work and no play.
No, they understand the link between good health and productivity. They make time for exercise, healthy eating, enough sleep. You often hear about their morning routines. Meditation for focus, exercise for energy, reading, setting clear goals for the day.
So it's about being in top shape to make those big decisions.
Exactly. A holistic approach, mental and physical, that supports their ability to manage their complex financial lives. And this is relevant for everyone.
Yeah, you can't make good financial decisions if you're burned out and exhausted.
Exactly.
Makes sense. And what about the people they surround themselves with?
Ah, yes. The network. Your network is your net worth, right?
I've heard that.
It's especially true at that level. They actively build relationships with other successful people. It's not about status. It's about surrounding themselves with like-minded individuals who can offer insights, opportunities, support.
So building a powerful network, not just socializing.
Exactly. And this, again, is something anyone can benefit from.
Building a community of support and shared learning. So we've covered a lot today. The billionaire mindset, long-term thinking, ownership, calculated risks.
Right.
We looked at their core investments, stocks, real estate, alternative assets, their strategies for diversification, global reach, passive income. We even delved into tax optimization, the role of businesses, trusts, and even charitable giving.
A lot to unpack.
And then those daily habits, lifelong learning, health, networks, it's all connected, isn't it?
It is. It all works together.
And while most of us aren't aiming to become billionaires, the underlying principles are still valuable. for anyone who wants to build a secure and prosperous future.
Absolutely. The scale might be different, but the principles are the same.
So to wrap things up, here's something to think about.
Okay.
We often hear people say that extreme wealth is just luck, right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
But after seeing how billionaires think and operate, I wonder if it's that simple. Maybe it's more about informed choices, consistently applying these principles over time.
It makes you think.
So, which of these strategies resonated with you? How can you apply them to your life? Because even though we might not all be billionaires, the fundamental principles that help them build and maintain their wealth are surprisingly consistent.
No matter where you're starting from.
It's about taking those first steps, making those changes, and building that brighter financial future.
One step at a time.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.